I'm not alone. I'm not the only school board director here in the state of Washington. There are hundreds of us. I know that none of them are going to give up anytime soon. And people are waking up, whether it's legal challenge to the state, whether it's initiatives being thrown at, to the state, whether it's school board directors banding up together for a class action lawsuit, whether it's school boards that are submitting these amendments. All these give me hope.
Welcome to Unmasking Government Schools with Sherry Few, US PI's weekly podcast that empowers parents to reclaim their children's education from government bureaucrats and social engineers, equipping you with the tools and resources needed to join the cause.
Hi everyone, welcome to Unmasking Government Schools with Sherry Few. I'm your host Sherry Few, and joining me today for the second time is Khush Brar, a Linden, Washington School Board member and parent who champions parental rights, student empowerment, and education that supports sound academics. Before we dive in, please take a moment to give us a 5-star rating or a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe and visit uspi.org to learn more and join the movement.
Today's episode is brought to you by U.S. parents involved in education. US PI's mission is to empower parents and local communities to break free from federal and national influences, thereby reclaiming parental authority over their children's education. For more insights from U.S. parents involved in education, connect with us at US PI on X and Facebook. To join the movement, visit uspi.org.
Welcome back to Unmasking Government Schools with Sherry Few. I'm your host, Sherry Few, and today I am joined again by Khush Brar, a Linden, Washington School Board member who has worked directly with Washington's education system and brings firsthand insight into how decisions made by state agencies and school boards affect students, families, and parental rights, particularly as it relates to gender ideology and athletics in public schools. Khush Brar, welcome back to the podcast.
It's my honor. Thank you for having me back, Sherry.
Oh, absolutely. So the last time that you're on the show, we discussed the situation in Washington State regarding biological males participating in girls' sports. So since then, I just asked what's changed and where do your efforts in the legal realm stand with the Office of Civil Rights?
What has happened since is that there was a complaint, an inquiry that has been opened by the Office of Civil Rights by the Federal Department of Education into Washington State. We haven't heard any updates so far regarding to that. However, after our interview, the WIAA amendment, which is Washington Interscholastic Athletic Activities Association, that's a lot of I's and A's. That's the entity that regulates K-12, the secondary sports basically in the state of Washington. There was an amendment submitted by our school districts, supported by 4 other school districts, to change their current policy on gender identity participation. So that went to a vote in April, first or second week, I believe, and we lost by 1 vote. Unfortunately.
Oh, no.
Yes, but it was first of a kind. There wasn't any amendment ever in the history of WIAA that was put forth other than, by coaches, by other officials. It's kind of like a little bit of a good old, boys club, with how it works. But this was the first time ever that a school district put an amendment, and that was to protect girls' sports. And I think it was much needed. Obviously, it was necessary. The first time around, there were a lot of, what do I say, misinformation. It's like, oh, you can't vote against something that's against the state law or illegal, things like that would deter the representatives from voting their conscience and voting for what is right. So as school board directors, we worked hard on that. I shared last year that there was a website that we put up for all of this information, and that was savegirlsportswa.com. Only 1 S. There's not a double S. So that was savegirlsportswa.com. sportswa.com. And same with this year. Now, fast forward to this year, since now we've connected back. Linden School District has submitted the same amendment from last year. And it's amendment number 21, just for reference. And it's to protect girls' sports. Same language, to limit the girls category to biological female only.
Okay, and I think I read my producer sent an article to me about it last year. And so it seemed like the amendment also opened up boys' sports to anyone, but girls' sports was limited to just girls. Is that correct?
Yes. So our Linden, there were two amendments last year. This year there's only one, and it's only Linden's. It's the same language as last year that we proposed, kind of based off of Alaska, their WIAA, or IAA, I'm sorry. It's replacing the boys category to be an open division, which I think it's not any different from the current practice because girls can, play in the boys category. It's just that, they assume that liability. They assume if it's anything, that comes along with playing into the boys category, especially for sports that aren't offered for the girls. I think right now that's what it's limited to. So with this amendment, we're just kind of opening it up for anything and everything at this point because we know that there are differences psychologically, not psychologically, I'm sorry, physiologically between males and females. And males do have, advantage in the athletic field over the females because of how their, physiology is made up of. So, taking that at the forefront, I think the mission here again is to protect girls' sports in any way that we can. So this is that way that most of the school districts that have supported Linden, have expressed their their desire of how to get this done. So we think it's a viable option. We think it's an unprecedented option. We haven't seen an open category contested, challenged, or even looked at under judicial lens for scrutiny. So the kind of misinformation and fear that is out there that, oh, it's against state law. Well, maybe if it was boys and girls sports and then we were limiting the girls to girls only, that's something that could be challenged, and validly so. However, this one, it's a little bit different. We're changing the boys to open, right? We're not limiting anybody into playing into that category, and then we're just reserving the girls for biological females. So far, in my digging of the rabbit holes and doing the research, I haven't found anything in the legal and the judicial branch where it talks about the open division. So this is interesting. It's new for us as well, and I think it's just what the times today call for. Kind of like the out of the box thinking and solutions of how do we make it right.
So I'm interested in all that you just said. Let me ask a few questions. So you've offered the same amendment again. So like you said, it's been almost a year since we visited. The vote in April, you lost by one vote, and you said that it's just the Linden School District, whereas last year it was multiple districts. How many districts was it last year that offered the amendments?
There were two, Linden and Eastmont, and then both were supported by 4 districts each, because that's the requirement to submit it. So this year we have 12 school districts in total that are supporting Linden's amendment.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's really good. So entire school districts. So I'm assuming then that a change like this has to come from a school district. That's the protocol for amending. I guess it's a handbook or rules that they have.
Yeah, WIA's handbook. Well, like I mentioned before, this is one of its kind because school districts haven't, really played a role into the amendment of the WIA handbook, it's usually the coaches that do that, the
Okay.
officials, the athletic directors that do that, because they're more, it's kind of under their purview. What are the
Right.
rules? What's going on with do we need girls flag football? That's kind of like their area of expertise. So usually what happened in the past is they're the ones who would make those amendments. And because we transfer our authority over to WIA to regulate all of these stuff, and then we have our athletic directors that we entrust that go through this process. So, like I said, lots of firsts, lots of news. But I'm very excited, that we are trying to find new ways, trying to think out of the box, for the problems that we are facing today.
So you said that the school districts give the authority to WIAA to regulate. Is in essence what you said,
Yep, it is. Yeah, it's a voluntary private nonprofit, and we sign off
right?
a resolution every year, kind of like a contract, to give the authority that originally we had to regulate the sport so that they can do it for us. So they're like a centralized organization that does that.
Okay. And I'm getting around to asking about who votes.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's interesting how that's a voluntary transition of power, and yet who are the people who are on this board or whatever it's called that actually vote on these things?
It would be the coaches, the athletic directors. I mean, we could delegate our superintendent, we could delegate a board member, but because of how there's bureaucracy, I think there is in every branch of the government, and anytime, it's an entity that has worked its way the way they wanted to for so many years, it becomes, really hard to break into. And they were shocked, last year. It was a big shock for WIA when they saw school districts energizing. It's like, wow, I mean, this is the first time we've seen a school district put something up, as an amendment. And you're going to be surprised because this year, sorry, going back to last year's amendment, the WIA's executive board, they said this amendment, however it gets voted on, it's going to be an advisory vote, period. Nothing more than that. That's what it's going to be. Because if it passes, it's against the state law. They decided it's against the state law, even though there's nothing concrete to prove that yet. Like I said, an open division hasn't really gone to the courts, so that matter isn't settled. But they decided that we're gonna make this vote advisory. So, I mean, this year they're doing the same thing with the amendment. They put in the handbook that Lyndon's, amendment that they've submitted, amendment number 21, to change the gender identity participation policy, we're going to make it an advisory vote. And what was shocking to me was when I looked through the other amendments, there was another amendment to be added to the handbook about voting on amendments that are against state law and voting. And if they pass, something like that, it said that they are going to be advisory votes. It's like, wow, the really the resistance, you see that apprehension of why not let the school district speak? Like you said, representatives, who are the voting people? The voting people, usually the boards have been, the process in the past years is that the vote has been kind of shut out of the process. I mean, it makes sense. Once you give your power away, nobody's going to really ask you, for your 2 cents anymore. So we changed that last year. We started educating school boards. There were a lot of school boards that did not know that, oh, we had a say. Oh, how does the process work? So it was a very, it was a learning curve. It was an educational moment. And I think this year we are better prepared, even though we've got more resistance coming our way. When I say our way, I'm talking about the school boards that are, supporting this amendment. I'm talking about the individual school boards even that support this amendment, but they don't really, they can't do much. So I'm talking about all of these people that support protecting girls sports, that they are here to fight, and we will fight. Doesn't matter what it takes. We're going to protect until we can.
Well, that's a great attitude. I applaud that. And I find this very interesting. So, the answer to the question was that the athletic directors are the ones who serve on this board, and they'll be the ones determining the vote, the outcome of this amendment. But again, it will be only in an advisory capacity. Is that right? It's being set up that way again?
Advisory. Yep. And the reason why, if you go to the website that I mentioned before, we have a strategy, right? How do we influence the vote? How do we encourage our representatives to vote the right way when we don't have the power anymore as a board, right? So a way to counter that is to pass resolutions stating the beliefs of the board. So that's what happened last year. With God's grace, there were 25 school boards, probably more, maybe about 30. Some that I don't know of. They passed resolutions to say that we support, as a board, we support amendment. Last year, whatever the numbers were this year. We're going to talk this year, so we're not confusing. This year it's Amendment 21. So last year we had 30 school boards do that. This year we have 12 that have written their name, submitted as a supporting district, and then there's going to be after that application submission, there's going to be more school boards that can pass resolutions so that they can show that support, because their school district, their school's athletic directors, their school's coaches, that way can recognize and know that this is what our school board is wanting. So we're trying to counter that, okay, we don't have the authority anymore because we, every year we transfer that authority over to WIA. However, how do we make our 2 cents heard? Because at the end of the day, we should have the direct authority over our superintendents, over our coaches, over our athletic directors. So how do we influence that? So that's a really good way for school districts to influence their school vote per se, which then goes to the leagues, and then the leagues tally it, right? And then that one person from the league is going to say, okay, this is the tally of the votes from my league based on these school votes.
Interesting. So, is it voting on the record? Will they know how their athletic director voted?
No, that's the tricky part, because it is a private nonprofit organization. It's a voluntary private nonprofit organization. That's the whole thing. There are ways that they're able to, it depends whether they want it or not. It's their decision at that point, because of that, the way they are, the way they're formed, the entity itself.
Right.
They're
So you're
a
saying,
public entity, even though one might
right,
argue, that the membership is made up of all public schools and whatnot. But
right.
that's the stance that they have said, relayed.
Okay. So yeah, I would think it's at least quasi government with who they represent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important to the
Very.
school board. It should be to know how your because basically it's almost like having an elected official. You're representing us in this vote,
Yep.
and knowing how they vote should be very important. And so you're saying that it's up to the membership themselves whether or not they vote on the record. So someone could make a motion and call for a roll call vote, something along those lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what happens is motion is made, right? And then someone on the other end, which is obviously part of the WIA executive team, right? So they're tallying that, but that's not visible to anyone. So last year, what happened was it was visible to the people who were voting, right? I I'm not sure if that's going to be true for this year, because I feel like they want to keep it they want to keep it behind closed doors. So, but that's a problem. See,
Right.
if you want the public, if you want your school districts, your membership to trust you, and trust is a really, we take it too lightly, when we're talking about people's kids, when we're talking about these families that we serve, we're taking it too lightly. So I don't know if WIA would be listening to this at some point, but I hope, that they would not change their practice from last year to this year, where at least the members can have that transparency and accountability that, okay, this is my vote is showing exactly as how I casted it, that, I mean, otherwise, what's the use of the process, if it's not going to be verified by even the person that's voting. So we'll see what happens. But one interesting thing from last year was that Robert Rules, there was a motion to table the amendment by someone who was neither the originating school district, and they were neither nor the supporting school district. Yet they were able to make the motion. Somebody seconded, and then there was a vote on it. So this year, we followed up and we were like, okay, we're going to have this assembly WIA is going to have this assembly this year again. Are we going to see the same thing happen? Because what's the purpose of these originating and supporting school districts to submit an amendment when anybody can take it off the table? It's like things don't work like that. If you don't want it, say it through your vote, right? That's the way how it should work. Only the submitting school district or the supporting school district should be able to withdraw or table the amendment, because otherwise it's moot. Like, why even submit in the first place when somebody can just come over and pour water over the fire or something like that. So they said that they're going to have and this was in a formal setting where these questions by asked yours truly with other school board directors in a conference, and this was the executive director of WIA who answered. It was Mick Hoffman, and he said that they will have a different parliamentarian this year. So if I'm reading between the lines, basically what that meant is what happened last year was wrong, and we're gonna make sure that the proper Robert rules and rules of orders are followed for this year. So I'm hopeful.
That's reassuring for sure.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll continue this conversation, but we need to take a short break. And when I come back, we're going to talk more about the amendments and, the other things you have going on. So don't go away. I'll be right back with my interview with Khush Brar right after this. U.S. Parents Involved in Education believes the T in LGBTQ causes serious harm because it is often rooted in unresolved trauma. Many children referred for gender transition have underlying mental health issues that require proper evaluation. In February 2025, the American College of Pediatricians issued a position statement noting that over half of LGBTQ individuals have experienced adverse childhood experiences such as abuse, explaining that sexual abuse or assault made them want to leave their gender linked to their trauma. These findings show the need for caution and proper mental health care rather than hasty affirmation. USPI urges parents and policymakers to consider the science and prioritize children's well-being. For more information and to join our movement, visit USPI.org and connect with us at USPI on Facebook and X. Welcome back to Unmasking Government Schools with Sherry Few. I'm your host, Sherry Few, and with me today is Khush Brar, a Linden, Washington school board member and parent. So how has the outcome of the WIAA shaped the broader educational climate in Washington, both in terms of ideology and real-world practice?
I think, Sherry, it gave voices to school districts to really weigh in on this controversial, impactful, result or issue that is very much it's affecting every school district almost, in the state. So the amendments, this whole process gave a voice And that is very, very important, especially when we're talking about democratic processes within entities and within entities that have somehow, they're used to the bureaucracy. So I think this is very powerful. This year, there's also, I don't know if you're aware or not, but there were two initiatives put to the people. One of them, this is by Let's Go Washington. It's an organization that put, initiatives last year as well. Um, over an array of issues. And this year, we're very happy as school boards. I am very happy as an individual school board director to see that there is an initiative out there that is trying to change, the law to limit girls' sports to biological females only. So, I think when this issue is very relevant, the signature gatherers, so far they've gathered what is required for the initiative to be certified and passed. It hasn't been certified yet, but they are very hope. It's going to come soon in the next coming weeks. So to pair that with what the school boards are doing on this side, and that's the people's voice, and then you've got the school board's voice, two things. Um, that's very powerful. I'm just very excited to be part of both processes, as a citizen and then as a school board director with the WIA amendment and the initiative as a citizen. Um, People they're really taking a stand over this. There's going to be hate, obviously there's going to be controversy, right, coming from the other side saying you're not inclusive, you're homophobic. uh, they go subjective when they can't find anything of substance to attack you with. Then they go with personal attacks. But nonetheless, I don't think it's very inclusive. I think it's, what do you call it, misogyny. It's bigotry really for males to invade our accomplishments, to step on our toes, right? Whether it's sports, whether it's restrooms, it's locker rooms, or whether it's our accomplishments. That's where are the feminists? I gotta ask. I don't hear them anymore. And it's just shocking. Um, Sometimes it's shocking to see how brainwashed people can be, where they don't realize they're not making any sense anymore. It's like my rights are going to end where yours are going to start. You can't keep pushing that line, to shove something down my throat that is basically infringing on my religious rights, on my First Amendment rights, right? On my Title IX protection rights because of females, for women, right? Yeah. So I'm very excited that this year the Supreme Court of the United States is going to hear two landmark cases about transgender athletes in student sports. Now, I'm not sure if they will answer Title IX, but so the two cases, one is from Idaho and then one is from West Virginia. So they're both, I think they've got claims on 14th Amendment, which is remind me again, I think it's the equal rights.
Equal protection.
Rights protection, yeah, that one. So the court will kind of decide whether transgender, the gender identity, is that a protected class? Can it be, is it considered a protected class under the 14th Amendment? So really, like I said, I have this T-shirt from, it's a Bible verse. It says, "Perhaps you were born for such a time like this," and I mean, I'm not a Catholic, I'm not a Christian, I'm a Sikh, but we've got we've got a lot more similarities than differences, really, as human beings. If we look beyond, you know, the physical differences that we have. And I'm very proud to wear that t-shirt because, like I said, these times, you're seeing the WIA amendments, you've got the initiatives, and now you've got, under President Trump's administration, you've got SCOTUS finally taking on these issues that really half of the nation has protection for female student athletes, and half doesn't. I don't think we can run as a nation when we have such different practices for half the country, and so I'm very excited, really, to see what comes out of that. SCOTUS usually rules by June 2025, so not that far. I can wait. Patience is, I hope the food is going to be sweet.
Amen. Amen to that. So you talked about the initiative which was happening in your state. So I'm wondering for our audience, is that similar to a referendum is in South Carolina where it goes to the voters? The initiative is something to be put on the ballot where voters can weigh in?
Yeah. So referendum is what you do usually when they're similar in nature, but referendum is when you pass, when there's a legislation, a law that gets passed, then you've got 90 days to kind of overthrow that law. So that's this referendum. Process is the same. Signatures get gathered. There's a certain requirement, right? And then it gets it so that it can go to the ballot. So for this initiative, they have a certain period or amount of time that they need to gather signatures. And once it qualifies, then that issue, that whatever legislation this initiative wants to target, it can go on the ballot. Or for the initiative, the other option is if the legislature votes to make it law, then that can happen too. It doesn't need to go to the people. If it goes to the people, what happens is it goes on the ballot. Let's just say it gets approved by the people. It becomes law. Now the legislature cannot touch to amend it for at least 2 years. Now, if the initiative goes to the legislature says, yeah, you know what, let's just vote on it. I feel like, so they can approve the legislation, make it a law, but the caveat here, and which they've done last year with a different initiative, it was the parents' rights. What they can do now is they can change it. They can amend it a year after, I think. Yeah, 1 year after the next session, they can amend it. So either way, maybe not. Either way it goes, I feel like it's gonna buy us time, to at least have that protection. Like I said, it's hard to be in a crazy state, in a state that is controlled by Democrats, because it's like that, you chop off one head of that snake, and then there's, how it is in like the mythology, and then there's five more that grow. So how do you keep up with that? It feels like, it's hopeless. It feels like nothing can be done. But that's where people who stay and fight come in, that there is hope. Like I said, again, I feel like, I was I didn't go to be a school board member just to become a placeholder. I feel like there's a reason for that. I feel like I know that courage is contagious. I know that you never underestimate, the power of a mustard seed, because that's what you do. You plant those seeds. And then I have seen school boards, school directors who were like, I don't know what to do. And then when you empower them with the knowledge, with the information, they're like, okay, we're going to do it. I mean, why not? So networking, empowering with knowledge, and then coming up with ways on how to fight and how to protect our children, how to fight the agenda in this state. And it is being done by a lot of people. It is being done, by average people like us, school board directors. We don't get paid. We're not here for the politics. We're fighting as if we're fighting for our own children, because I feel like, personally speaking, that I was put into this position by God for a reason. And he's guiding, it. You just feel it when you knock on the doors, and he's guiding you, and he's opening those doors for you, and then he's right there with you every step of the way. So why should I give up? Why should I worry about things that he's just using me? We're all serving at his will. So that's how I feel about, and that's why there's still hope. in this state, because this state at some point might become the battleground. This state might be the next, I don't know, Washington Tea Party, because of how, extreme it is being pushed to the edge. But like I said, I'm hopeful. We're staying here. We're not going to leave because at the end of the day, like Idaho says, they have a cow problem. They've got California, Oregon, and Washington cow people going into the, moving and migrating into their state. And we've seen how that plays. They don't change their ideology and they vote the same way, and then next thing you know, the problems that they had left behind are now right there where they have moved to, because they didn't leave them behind. They didn't leave the reason for those behind in the first place.
Well, I think that's the most amazing thing about all that we're discussing today is that it is happening within Washington state. To me, it's just still so incredible. I remember when we first talked about all of this, and you told me, I think at that time you had 14 other school districts that you were collaborating with, and I was shocked. I mean, I thought it'd be great if just one, one school district in Washington state was going to take a stand, but to see so many, but this has to be it's a common sense issue. The other side really doesn't have an argument, and I think that's why, as you alluded to earlier, they don't have an argument, so they start name calling and shaming and slander and all of that, and they like to defend boys competing in girls sports as inclusion and equity, but from what you've seen, how would you say that it affects girls? I mean, in defense of girls, what is your bottom line on that?
I've talked to student athletes, female student athletes across country, in my own school district, and this is what they said, and that's it, just one line, and that ever since, it's stuck with me. They said we feel hopeless. They said we feel like, why even try to compete when we know that we're not going to win against a boy? Again, because of the scientific facts. I don't know why people don't want to trust the science on this. It's like they're just picky, with what science they want to trust, when it's like you said, it's common sense. So when the female said that, they just said so much without saying so much. So that's how they feel. It's the morale. And let me tell you one thing, Sherry. This year, Linden School District, we I think we bagged a championship, state championship for our girls volleyball. That hasn't been done, like, I don't know how many years. That's huge. That's the effect of a school district that's trying to protect its female athletes. And then we also have one for our cross country. I think the effect is just amazing when adults start standing up for our children, because they shouldn't have to. This is not their burden to carry. It wasn't, they didn't cause it in the first place.
Amen to that. So let's circle back to the first question that I asked you about with your complaint with the Office of Civil Rights.
Mhm.
So that's with the U.S. Department of Education.
Mhm.
And so I understand there are multiple complaints. I mean, there are so many that there's a backlog, and they've hired extra staff to try to respond to them. So you haven't had any progress on that whatsoever?
No, we haven't heard back. And I think it would be prudent to also kind of mention. I think state of Oregon is also under investigation. California is also under investigation. We were the last one kind of to be where the inquiry started. So I think we'd have to look over to state of Maine first and foremost. State of Maine, and then California, and then Oregon, then it's going to be Washington. But yeah, so far I haven't heard any progress. I know there's a lawsuit against state of Maine from DOJ. It's different from the one that was about the funding. I think because the funding that got resolved, right, with the USDA.
Right.
Yeah, those got unfrozen. But there's another separate lawsuit, I think last year of April or something, that was filed by DOJ against state of Maine. So it's exciting. We'll see. I am very hopeful, at least for the next 3 years of this administration, of doing the right things. And I think this was one of the main issues, really, that was a highlight of of Trump's platform during the campaign. And I think that was a contributing, resonating factor for the people, for the popular vote, that they do not want men in female, in women sports and spaces. They don't want that. It's very clear.
Very clear across the aisle. I think it is. A nonpartisan issue, and Washington State is proving that for us, and we appreciate all that you're doing. So we need to take another short break, but when I come back, I'd like to ask you two questions I ask all my guests before closing the show. Don't go away. I'll be right back with my interview with Khush Brar right after this. U.S. Parents Involved in Education has observed the intense pressure and real danger facing those who speak out against transgender ideology. Many parents remain silent due to fear of retaliation. But behind the scenes, the transgender industry generates massive profits. Grandview Research estimates that the U.S. sex reassignment surgery market was $2.1 billion in 2022 and will exceed $44 billion by 2030. This huge financial incentive helps explain why ideology and money combine to protect harmful practices. USPI believes all parents must overcome fear and speak out to protect children and the nation from this damaging industry. For more information and to join our movement, visit uspie.org and connect with us at USPI on Facebook and X. Welcome back to Unmasking Government Schools with Sherry Few. I'm your host, Sherry Few, and with me today is Khush Brar, a Linden, Washington School Board member and parent. As you know, Khush, because you've been on before, we close our show with two important questions. What concerns you most about what's happening in education today, and what gives you hope?
What's happening in public education today? I think what's happening is exactly the opposite. There's more noise, there's more politics, and then it's not student centered anymore. It's more about these ideologies and other agendas instead of focusing on the core academics. We need to be focusing the reason why we were elected, the reason why there's public education in the first place, which is academic excellence. So I think that point is being missed by officials that are really doing what's best for families that we serve in the state of Washington. And what gives me hope? What gives me hope is that we're fighting. That's what gives me hope. What gives me hope is to see all of these different, challenges being thrown at the government so that we can, wake up. This is what the people want. We're not giving up. That's what gives me hope. What gives me hope is that you see school boards growing, increasing in numbers, that are trying to stand their ground for common sense, trying to stand their ground for the truth, and trying to stand their ground, for most, into serving the families that their communities have trusted and pay them, honestly, fund them, to do that. So that gives me hope, because I know I'm not alone. I'm not the only, courage, brave school board director here in the state of Washington. There are hundreds of us. And I know that none of them are going to give up anytime soon. And people are waking up. So the momentum is there. The seeds were planted, and I think people have had enough. So I'm hearing it from, like I said, every front, whether it's legal challenge to the state, whether it's initiatives being thrown at, to the state, whether it's school board directors banding up together for a class action lawsuit, whether it's school boards that are submitting these amendments. All these give me hope that I don't think it's lost yet. We might be the change that we want to see in the rest of the half of the nation.
And that gives me hope also. Like I said, especially coming out of the state of Washington, that gives me great hope. And so, why don't we give your website again?
Yeah, so the website is savegirlsportswa.com. Everyone has got an action item that they can do, whether you're an organization, you can write a letter of support to Amendment WIA Amendment 21 submitted by Lyndon. Whether you're an average citizen, you can click on contact WIAA, and then, the message is pre-filled. It will go to all of those school board athletic not school board, I'm sorry, athletic directors or representatives from last year. They're going to be the same for this year as well. So you can get that done. If you're a school board, you can pass resolutions. There's two different kinds. If you just want to support the amendment, great. If you want to be braver, you want to support the other two state initiatives put forth by Let's Go Washington, you can do that as well. You can do both if you want to. There's a lot of things that you can do, honestly. It's just that you have to, if there's a will, there's a way. And this website will help you, get that way.
Well, I encourage our audience, especially those who reside in Washington State, to go to that website and help this effort, by submitting letters, letting your opinion be known. If you're on a school board, what a great resource. And even if you're in another state, it sounds to me like this is a great model to follow. So you can gather all of the resources from this website, and we'll put it up on the screen when this broadcasts so that everybody can get it right, because this is an excellent resource, and I'd like for everybody to take advantage of it. And if Washington State can do it, your state can do it too. So thanks again, Khush, for coming back on the show. This has been exciting. I look forward to hearing from you maybe 6 months out, and we can hear how things are going. And you'll have a vote in April again, so we'll try to schedule you to come back on and tell us how that went, and we'll be praying for your success.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Thank you. And thank you for covering, issues and topics like these, and then getting the information and word out to everyday people. Appreciate it.
All right, absolutely. To our listeners, if you found today's discussion eye-opening, please share this episode with a friend. Give us a 5-star rating and subscribe to stay informed. You can connect with us on Facebook and X at USPI and visit uspie.org to join the movement. Until next time, I'm Sherry Few. Thank you for your support of USPI and our efforts to unmask government schools.
U.S. Parents Involved in Education is a nonprofit coalition dedicated to restoring local control of education and parental authority. By empowering parents to reclaim responsibility for their children's learning and encouraging states to move away from federal influence, USPI seeks to create a culture where parents are the primary decision makers in education and schools support families without the burden of federal mandates. If you want to start a state or regional USPI chapter in your area, please visit uspie.org and complete the brief questionnaire in the chapter section.